Hey folks, this is Shane from Performance EV. Today we're going to keep on going with our wiring. Hey folks, welcome to the channel. Thank you so much for joining us. So for those of you new to this channel, this is my project to put a Nissan Leaf motor into a Porsche 911. We're actually nearly there. We actually have the motor in place. We've got inverter working, we've got power going to the wheels, and now it's all those really annoying little jobs that I've been putting off for months that I kind of really have to get on top of. So in the last video you might have seen that we got our kind of control wiring for the inverter really sorted. So got the signals from the throttle, for example, properly in place, proper connectors with them going all the way back to the inverter, got 12 volts coming from the car battery again to the inverter, got it plumbed into the start switch. So we're really making good progress there. But we've got the other side of the things to integrate this whole system into the car, and that's the ancillaries. So in getting rid of the engine, which I did, I don't know, 6 months ago, probably even longer, maybe even 8 or 9 months ago, we lost a bunch of systems. And I've done a couple of videos on the basics of getting those back in place. So we've got our electric power steering pump providing pressure to our power steering system. So we've still got the Porsche rack in there, but the pump that's doing it isn't run off the engine anymore. It's coming off an electric motor or electric pump. So that's working well, as is the vacuum pump for the brake booster. Still have some work to do on tweaking that system to make it hold vacuum for longer, but it gives me what I need to be able to stop the car, which is important. So we've got those, but up until now, basically I've been running the car on effectively 4 batteries. So I could leave the battery out of the main 12 volt battery for the car. I could actually leave that out and just have one battery, 12 volt battery in the passenger footwell, which was powering the inverter, and then I had 2 more 12 volt batteries in the front trunk, which were powering the pump and the brake booster. So that's obviously not really a long-term solution. Every time I want to start the car, to go open up the trunk, put some wires onto those 2 batteries, get in the car, put the wires onto the inverter battery, and that was just a pain. So we've gotten rid of the inverter battery in the last episode, and in this episode we're going to get rid of the other 2, so that all I need to do to get the car running, sit in, turn the key, push the accelerator. That's the plan. Let's see how it goes. So the other 2 batteries that I've tended to use have been for these ancillary components in here. So we've got the brake booster vacuum, and we've got our power steering. In the end, it turned out the power steering wasn't getting enough power, which is why I kept on cutting out. So I've had to temporarily wire it into the main battery, but that obviously isn't how I want to do it permanently. So this side for the power steering is the ground. We can find a grounding point to connect that to. That won't be a problem. And then you've got the power signals. So basically you've got one which is the main power, and that's where we want our strong 12 volt going to, and then you've got just what are effectively signal wires. So these would be low power 12 volt that we want going here. So this I'm going to connect to a permanent 12 volt, hopefully via, not directly to the battery, but if I have to, I'll do that. And then these will be through one of the fuses that I found that switches on when it gets to the accessory position. In terms of where we're going to wire it into, I want to check in behind here, because this is where I believe the main distribution of electricity in the car is housed, and there are some of those that are no longer needed because we don't need to send power to the engine. Okay, so we've got a solution forming. Basically the distribution box behind here is inaccessible at the moment. So what I'm going to try and do is run power from this point as if it's going to the distribution box, but that is effectively running power from the battery. So in order to make it safe, I'm not going to run it directly into anything. I'm going to run it via a fuse board. Now this is way too big, 6 outputs. It's one I got for using down the back with all the kind of high voltage control stuff, but it'll do for now. I've got a smaller one on order. So basically we're going to wire to one side of this and then have a suitable size fuse going to both the power steering and anything else I want to power up here. It's a sunny but cool and breezy day here at the moment. Hopefully I can get this work done without the trunk lid falling on my head. But yeah, so we're going to try and finish up the wiring for the brake booster piece. So it already has a relay going into it, which basically when it receives the negative signal from the sensor, it then sends power to the booster. So what I'm going to do is add another relay in line with this, which is connected down to the fuse board, and basically when it's in the on position, that's when this relay effectively will be active, but the booster vacuum pump will still only get power when it detects that there isn't enough vacuum in the brake booster. So first thing I want to do is actually get this wired properly to the vehicle ground, and then get the power side of it hooked up. Okay, so I didn't want to show you me sitting down on the floor, tearing my hair out, trying to figure this out. Basically, we've got 4 relays here. One I'm going to use for the power steering, one I'm going to use for the inverter, and one I'm going to use, well, 2 I'm going to use for the brake booster. So these 3 are going to be switched on when the fuse that I identified yesterday hits the accessory position, and then this one will switch on whenever the vacuum is too low, but it will only have power when the thing is in the accessory position. So now I need to make this mess of wires merge into a more sensible setup. Okay, so we've pretty much got everything plumbed in. So we've got our power steering pump that is
wired negative to the ground point just here in the front of the boot. There's also a large, thick, permanent 12 going to where the 12 volt from the battery goes in, but that is going in via a heavy duty fuse. So this is rated for 80 amps, so we'll use an 80 amp fuse. Then we have the signal wires. So they've got their own little block connector, and they're heading over this direction. Right, so over this side we've obviously got our vacuum pump for the brake booster down below there, but the wires are coming in, so that again, that isn't wired directly to the negative because it's going via the switch here which detects the vacuum pressure, and by either allowing the negative to be connected or disconnecting it decides whether it's turned on or off. So that's the piece that's actually connected to the ground point just here. Then we've got the positive from the pump running up here, and what we're doing is we're providing both the positive and negative for the pump from some relays. So there's two relays for the setup. One is coming from the accessory switch on the ignition, and the other is basically taking the signal from the vacuum sensor. So that's two of the relays. We've got four in total. Another one is for the brake booster, or not the brake booster, power assisted steering. And then the last one is basically, I've decided not to pull the 12 volts required for the inverter directly from the fuse panel. I'm just taking the fuse panel signal to trigger these relays, and then the actual power for these is going to come from a separate live that I've got coming through the main terminal block, which is fused anyway, but these have a slightly lower amperage fuse than that coming through. So that's providing the power for the inverter and controls, the brake booster, and the signals to the power steering. So with these all plumbed up, I should just be able to turn on the key and drive the car. Hopefully. All right, I would consider that a success. I've definitely got some tuning that I need to do on the inverter. It takes quite a lot of pedal travel before anything starts to move, but I was able to just sit in, turn the key, and get it to drive. Now, obviously, yeah, the forward and reverse is still through my clunky little switches, so that will need to be corrected in the not too distant future. But in terms of switching the car on and being able to drive it, key is the key. back into the garage. Brought the car in here because the weather's changed and it's cold and windy outside. There's nothing I hate more than working when it's really windy. So now it's time to get on to our next final wiring task for the moment, which is to try and get the stereo working. Not exactly an essential, but one of the more important luxuries. So we've got an issue with the amp where it's not sending a clean signal to the speakers. The speakers themselves seem to be working fine based on the testing. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to wire up the speakers directly and effectively delete the amp for the time being. So the first thing I need to do here is pull the battery out. A lot of the things I need to access are in behind it, and it'll be much easier with it out of the way. So with that out of the way, I'm basically going to try and send or pull, don't know which way, probably pull this cable through. So this is the last of the cables that was slung in there for the 6 CD changer. I've already cut the ends off it, so I'm going to tape some speaker cable or some cable onto it, figure out what length I need, and then pull through some speaker cable. Alright, so I can finally get this unsightly nest of wires out of here. Okay, so we're ready to send our speaker cable through. Got it taped up, got it marked up. Obviously this cable is all the same color, so I've had to mark on both ends, which is front, middle and rear speakers. But yeah, let's send this through. Okay, so we've got our wiring heat shrinked and tucked in out of the way, routing around the battery and in just beside the driver footwell. Got all our other power stuff there. So I think we're in a good place. I'm just going to put the cover on for the battery so nothing accidentally shorts on the positive terminal, and we'll go and try the radio. All right, there we go. So that's this wired in now, which is awesome. So hopefully I won't have to take it out again. We've got the speakers wired in. We've got the I've got a couple of USB ports coming down the side there now, and yeah, it functions as it should. I can listen to music, I can check out what's happening in the inverter, got my sat nav on there, so that's all good. And the other wiring's looking pretty good too. The only thing really that we need to work on, and this is going to be a slightly longer term project, is the forward and reverse. I want to get it through the shifter, but for the moment we've got this little knob and that does it. All right, we're almost there. We've got power going to the big beefy pump that provides the power steering. We've got power going to the brake booster. We've got power going to the inverter, and all of that is now working with the turn of a switch. Really the only thing, well, there's two things that I want to get wired up in the future, is getting the signal from the gear shifter so that when I select drive it goes forward, when I select reverse it goes in reverse, and when I have it in neither of those it's in neutral. And also to put in a switch that looks like it's part of the Porsche dash for switching on the charging circuit once I build that. So this inverter can run a charger, and I'll do an episode, run as a charger, and I'll do an episode on that at some point in the future. But we're getting there.
I think now I've got it at the point where I can easily just drive the car in and out of the garage. It doesn't take too much time. You know, it used to take me like nearly 5 minutes to get the car ready just to roll, which, yeah, is a pain. But now that I've got it set up like this, I can just sit in, turn the key, drive it into the garage, and that's going to make it much easier for the next step of the project, which is actually building the battery box. Because I'm going to have to mock things up and then trial fit them in the car. And basically the only space I really have to do the welding is here in the garage. So I need the car out for that, but then I need to have it back in so I can get it on the lift and mock things up. But that's for the future. I think today went really well. I'm really happy with the result. So I hope you've enjoyed it. And if you've liked it, please, and you're not already subscribed, please consider subscribing. Drop us a like. If you've got any comments, please fire them in. As anyone or most people who've commented know, I do engage in the comment section. I do really appreciate the comments. There have been some great ideas that have come through in there, some great feedback on the channel, and also just great kind of morale booster for me when people say thanks. Little things like that makes you happy, eh? But yeah, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.